Winter arrived in Silver Creek the way grief does, quietly, without asking permission, settling into every crack until even breathing felt heavier. Snow softened the edges of the town, but it did nothing to soften the people. I remember that morning because Eliza May Holloway walked through it like a shadow that had forgotten how to belong to a body. Her black shawl was too thin for the cold, her boots worn smooth by miles of endurance, and her eyes carried the kind of tired that sleep cannot cure. When she passed, conversations did not stop. They bent around her, sharp and deliberate, like thorns refusing to move aside. Some said Winter had followed her husband into the grave. Others said misfortune clung to her skirts. In Silver Creek, sorrow was tolerated only if it was brief and quiet. Eliza's had lasted too long. She kept her head down as she crossed Main Street, the snow creaking beneath her steps. A child laughed when she slipped on the ice. A woman did not hide her scowl. The bell above Crowley's dry goods rang when Eliza stepped inside, and the warmth that met her skin did not reach the eyes of Martha Crowley. Prices rose without explanation. Change came back short. It was never spoken aloud, but Eliza understood the lesson well. Grief was a debt she was expected to pay forever. Her husband, Thomas Holloway, had been buried 2 winters ago. A fever took him fast, and the town decided just as quickly that Eliza should have followed. She had been too quiet at the funeral, too composed. Women whispered that she must not have loved him enough. Men looked at her with a mixture of suspicion and something uglier. No one asked how a heart learns to fold itself inward just to survive. Eliza returned to her cabin on the edge of town before dusk, as she always did. The path there was narrow, bordered by trees that rattled in the wind like old bones. Inside, the cold waited patiently. She lit the stove with practiced hands, the flame catching slow, reluctant. Supper was thin stew and yesterday's bread. She ate standing up, as if sitting might invite memories she could not afford to entertain. There was a mirror above the wash basin, its glass cracked like a lightning strike. She avoided it, but some nights the reflection caught her anyway, a woman not yet old, yet already worn smooth by endurance. Eliza washed her hands until the water burned, scrubbing away more than dirt, trying to erase the feeling of being watched even when alone. That night, as snow thickened against the windows, she heard something outside. Footsteps. She froze, breath held, heart hammering with an old fear. No knock came. No voice called her name. Only silence returned. When she finally opened the door, she found a stack of firewood neatly piled against the wall, dry and cut to size. No tracks lingered long enough to tell her who had come. The wind erased them quickly, as if the act itself wished to remain unseen. Eliza stood there longer than the cold allowed, fingers numb, confusion blooming where despair usually lived. No one in Silver Creek gave without taking something back. She carried the wood inside one armful at a time, each piece heavier than it should have been, because hope, when unexpected, is a burden of its own. In town, Caleb Boone Whitaker watched snowfall gather on the hitching post outside the saloon. He was a man people spoke about carefully, as if words themselves might provoke him. Wealth had built his ranch, but solitude had shaped the rest. He did not drink much, did not laugh loudly, did not linger where gossip lived. His presence alone bent rooms into quiet. Caleb had noticed Eliza long before others decided to look away. He had seen how she flinched at laughter not meant for her, how she stood straighter when insulted, refusing to fold completely. When the town turned its back, he watched. When cruelty passed itself off as righteousness, he remembered a woman once, his mother, who had been treated the same way, her grief weighed and found inconvenient. At church the following Sunday, Eliza sat in her usual place near the back, coat pulled tight. Hymns rose around her, hollow and distant. She did not sing. Halfway through the service, she noticed a heavy wool coat folded neatly beside her on the bench, warmer than anything she owned. No one claimed it. No one looked her way. Across the aisle, Caleb Whitaker sat unmoving, eyes fixed forward, hands clasped as if in prayer or restraint. When their gazes briefly met, he looked away first. The coat stayed with her long after the congregation filed out, long after whispers followed her down the aisle. She did not ask where it came from. Gratitude, she had learned, was safest when kept quiet. As winter deepened, so did the town's patience wear thin. Rumors sharpened, their edges honed by boredom and fear. Martha Crowley spoke of Eliza as if she were a sickness that might spread. Some suggested the cabin should be reclaimed. Others said it was time Eliza moved on, where, no one cared to say. The sheriff heard it all and did nothing. Silence, after all, requires no courage. Eliza felt the pressure like a tightening noose. She walked faster through town now, eyes fixed on the ground. At night, she lay awake listening to the wind, wondering how much smaller a life could become before it disappeared entirely. Yet still, small mercies arrived without names attached. A sack of flour left by her door. A repaired fence she did not remember breaking. Each kindness confused her more than cruelty ever had. Caleb's restraint grew heavier with each passing day. He understood the language of towns like Silver Creek, the way judgment disguised itself as morality, the way a woman alone became an easy target. He also understood that stepping in too loudly would only make things worse. Protection, he knew, had to be undeniable to be effective. The night before the first hard freeze split the river ice, Eliza stood outside her cabin, watching snow fall thick and steady. It looked almost peaceful, the way it buried everything evenly, no favoritism, no blame. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to imagine what quiet without fear might feel like. From the rise beyond the trees, Caleb watched her too. He did not call out. He did not move closer. He simply stood there, the decision forming in the space between one breath and the next. Some choices are not born of desire but of memory, of old wounds demanding not to be repeated. Eliza turned back inside, unaware that the shape of her life was about to change. The snow kept falling, covering tracks, smoothing over what had been and what was yet to come. And in that silence, heavy and expectant, winter held its breath, waiting. The morning Caleb Whitaker came to Eliza's cabin, the cold carried a different weight. It was sharper, more decisive, as if winter itself had made up its mind. Eliza saw him through the window before she heard the knock, a tall figure standing still in the snow, hat in his hands, breath slow and controlled. For a moment she wondered if she had imagined him, like the other quiet mercies that had arrived and vanished without explanation. Then the knock came again, firm but careful, as though he feared breaking something fragile. She opened the door only part way. The warmth fled immediately. Caleb did not step closer. He spoke her name once, just once, and there was no pity in it. Only recognition. "I won't take much of your time," he said. "But I won't waste it either." They sat at her small table, the space between them measured and respectful. He did not look around the cabin, did not inventory her poverty with his eyes. He spoke plainly, without flourish or apology. He told her the town would not stop, that it would grow bolder, crueler. That silence had never protected anyone for long. Then he said the words that seemed to still the air itself, that he wished to marry her. Eliza did not answer at first. Shock pressed her into stillness. She searched his face for mockery, for advantage, for the hunger men often carried when they believed a woman had nothing left to lose. She found none of it, only resolve, and beneath it, something guarded and old. "I'm not asking for affection," Caleb continued, voice low. "I'm offering protection, a name the town won't dare soil, a place where you can breathe." It felt like an insult and a salvation all at once. Her pride flared, wounded and weary. She wanted to refuse simply to prove she still could. But another part of her, the part that counted firewood and rationed hope, recognized truth when it stood in front of her. She asked him why. He did not answer then. He only said, "Because no one should be punished for surviving." The wedding came quietly, as winter things do. No music carried through the streets. No flowers dared bloom. Eliza wore her best dress, mended so many times it barely remembered its original shape. Caleb stood beside her, solid as the land he owned, his presence alone enough to still the whispers that tried to rise. The vows were spoken quickly, without poetry, but something unspoken settled between them, heavier and more sincere than promises ever are. When Eliza left the church on his arm, the town watched with narrowed eyes. Some looked angry, others ashamed. Martha Crowley's mouth tightened, her certainty shaken. No one followed them to the ranch. Life there unfolded slowly, deliberately. The house was large but not cold, filled with the kind of quiet that heals instead of accusing. Caleb gave Eliza space without distance. He never entered her room without permission, never asked questions she had not offered answers to. His care showed itself in small ways: a lamp lit before dusk, a chair drawn close to the stove, meals prepared when her hands trembled too much to manage. At night, they sat across from one another, sharing silence that felt companionable rather than empty. Eliza found herself listening for his footsteps, not out of fear, but reassurance. For the first time in years, sleep came without bargaining. It was weeks before Caleb spoke of his past. They were mending tack in the barn, snow whispering against the roof, when he told her about his mother. A widow like Eliza, once pushed to the edge by gossip dressed as concern. He told her how the town had smiled while it starved her of dignity, how she had faded quietly, convinced her suffering was deserved. Caleb did not look at Eliza as he spoke. His hands stilled, knuckles pale. "I couldn't save her," he said. "But I won't stand by again." Eliza understood then that their marriage was not charity. It was defiance, a refusal to let history repeat itself. Something in her chest loosened, a knot she had long mistaken for part of her heart. Spring did not arrive all at once. Snow lingered in the shadows, stubborn and slow to release its hold. When Eliza returned to town for the first time as Caleb's wife, she did so with her spine straight and her gaze lifted. Whispers followed her still, but they lacked their former bite. People stepped aside now. Some nodded. Others looked away. At the winter market, Martha Crowley spoke too loudly, her words sharp with disbelief. "Funny how fortune changes," she said, eyes fixed on Eliza like a challenge. The crowd stilled, waiting for Eliza to shrink, to apologize for her own endurance. Eliza did neither. She met Martha's gaze calmly, her voice steady enough to surprise even herself. "Fortune didn't change," she said. "Only where I stand." The silence that followed felt earned. Caleb said nothing, but his hand found hers, grounding and warm. The town had no answer for dignity when it refused to bow. That night, as the last snow melted into dark earth, Caleb reached for her hand again, slower this time, as if asking a question he was prepared to have unanswered. Eliza closed her fingers around his. It was not passion that passed between them, but trust, deeper, steadier, far more dangerous to lose. Years later, when I think back on that winter, I remember how love did not arrive as fire or thunder. It came as shelter, as presence, as the courage to stand beside another when the world insists you should stand alone. Some of us are not rescued by grand gestures, but by quiet ones that refuse to look away. And if this story lingers with you, if you have ever known the ache of being judged before being known, carry this with you. Dignity is not granted by crowds, but claimed in small, brave moments. Stay for the stories that honor that truth. Walk with us through these old winters and hard-won springs. And if you wish, subscribe, so you don't have to walk alone.